played.
This is a scary moment.
Yeah, this could. We talked about moments earlier that could have been the world championship potentially for Magnus when he was under pressure, but that slightly, I hate to use the word careless, but it feels a little bit careless to underestimate rook takes a3 when it's white's only intention. So, I mean...
Also, just from a logical point of view, black's queen will move and white's rook will move in the next two moves. That means that we've traded an a-pawn for an h-pawn. The a-pawn was passed on a3 defended by a bishop. The h-pawn, well, it's a good pawn, but it's
not that good.
It's not that good, yeah.
He traded h4 for a3. And again, the reason my first instinct was, okay, there must be some idea that he calculated where you get h4. If you could get h4 in, that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
Right? But as we're seeing where the queen moves, there's no h4 coming. Rook a4 tactically holds everything.
Yeah, and for example, let's make queen to h3, another move that prepares h4. I think that white can even play rook to a4 here.
I was going to say there's also knight f3, but okay. Well, oh, no, knight f3, bishop g3.
Because my idea is after h4, if black were to do that, then white has to move knight to f3, there's bishop takes g3. So maybe...
Yeah, that's what I was looking at earlier.
Maybe this works out for black.
Wait, but what's black's next move here?
That's kind
right,
of
like you maybe white has some move because black
rook to f1.
Yeah, rook f1.
Wow. The point is, if the bishop moves, everyone they're talking about this. Rook takes h4.
I really think rook to f1 is a serious move here.
Yeah.
Because it also threatens f takes g3.
Yeah. So if I move the king,
now f takes g3.
Now you take it.
King h1
and knight h2.
And you bake it.
And this is terrible.
And you win.
Losing.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So
gosh.
after rook f1, there's the move queen d7.
And then rook d4.
And then bishop d6.
Oh, what?
Well, it's the only way black can continue the game.
Well, and if the rooks double again?
Then maybe queen f5, or queen c6, I don't know. Black is even trying to hang on with tactics.
7, actually.
Black is trying to hang in there with tactics, but maybe he manages.
No, but here, well, there are multiple things.
Yeah,
Go back for a second. Rook takes h4 check.
Yeah.
King moves. Rook takes d6. Queen f3. And rook f4. Like even something like this will make the life very difficult.
Or knight d4 instead of rook d6.
Yeah, that's even better.
The knight comes to f5.
We have a move. Queen to e4 has been played.
Yeah, I was thinking here.
Oops, sorry about that.
I was thinking here maybe knight to e2.
Wait, but the rook's hanging on it.
Oh, sorry. No, rook to a4 in that case is obligatory. Maybe not obligatory, but the most logical move is rook to a4. And if h4, the knight moves. But black still has bishop to e5. Doesn't look so easy for white to make the next move here.
What if we start? Maybe it doesn't work. I was thinking, what if we bring our second rook to a4? So we activate with like rook a6 instead of rook a4, but it feels a little dicey.
Or that just gave me an idea. Maybe rook to a7. Maybe we're back to
that's better for sure.
We're back to the king being an issue for black. If h4, rook takes f7, and we might see still some sort of attack on the king. King g6, rook to a7, and
I can sacrifice my queen on h7.
Yeah, maybe it's still a draw.
That's kind of key.
This still looks like a draw.
Jan gets up. Going to take a confident stroll. Only 12 minutes remain for Magnus Carlsen to make the next 6 moves. We are on move 54. Remember, the next threshold, if you will, the next finish line is move 60, as that is when more time will yet again be added onto the clock and increment. If somehow Magnus gets through this next time scramble that's approaching and he still has winning chances, now the increment will make a huge difference.
Yeah, the increment helps Magnus and not Jan.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, big time.
Because more time allows white to find winning chances, whereas black needs to react to what white's threatening. And such a difference now without the a-pawn and h-pawn. I mean, look at the rook on a4 active. The rooks are connected with one another, not just staring into a black pawn, but staring over towards the king side. And if you're not careful, that h5 pawn can always be targeted. The knight can reroute to f4 at some point via e2. I mean, that was Fabiano's suggestion. Of course, we got the rook out of the way first. And the rook can come to h4. Like, it feels like black's initiative against white's king not really amounting to much more than a bunch of checks that you hope leads to a draw. And white, on the other hand, is looking just pile up pressure against black's pieces.
Bishop e5, I think, is the only move the more we look at it.
Yeah, and I think white can make a simple move like, well, you have to keep your rook on a4 protected so that after h4, your knight can move. That's actually the difficulty, because if rook c1, for example, h4 comes.
Right.
And your knight can no longer move, so black trades off these pawns, which is really necessary for him.
And h4 in the initial position is not a threat, because after bishop e5, I mean, I don't know how to pass, but if I could just pass and you play h4, then I move my knight out the way and take on h4 with check in some of these positions. I mean, maybe white's pieces all over the place, so tactically black can get away with it, but it's not clear to me that h4 actually is available to black if white could just pass his turn.
But it should be noted, likewise, that bishop e5 is not, it's not really a threat because you intend to take here. In fact, that would be the last thing you want to do, is trade the bishop for the knight and allow the rooks to coordinate to pick off one weak pawn after another. The bishop on e5 is really just an active sort of, whatever he's doing here to the white camp is sort of confusing the situation. You can't move the rook off of the pin without undefending this rook and therefore opening up h4 possibilities. You can't move the knight without the rook falling. You can't move the rook off the last rank without opening up tactics here.
Well, maybe you can play rook a2 because after h4 there's knight to c2. You don't allow a check on.
That's really key.
Essential.
Black can give a check on b1 first and then play h4.
But then maybe you can just take it.
Maybe you can take it and put knight on f3. But then there's queen g6, and that the threats along those squares b1 and g6 look like a draw. I don't see white's king hiding anywhere.
The perpetual check.
So maybe after bishop to e5, the best move is knight to e2. It looks very awkward, but there's one thing that white needs, which is to stop h4. White can try to slowly reorganize the pieces, just don't allow h4. And here, like, okay, let's say queen c2 is the most natural move. Now rook to a2. Check somewhere. King to g2, or even h2, because the rook on a2 depends.
H4 anymore. Well, you allow queen f1.
Yeah, but then the knight can actually organize itself in any way it wants. For example, knight to g1 suggests itself. Knight to f3, slowly you try.
Yeah.
This isn't, white will not organize quickly.
Bishop e5 is on the board. For the record.
It just goes to your point you've been making time and time again, Fabi, that the longer this game goes, it feels like that increases white's winning chances. Because if black is going to be able to just immediately end the game with some move, that's the dream. And you want to play h4, not happening. You want to create some sort of pressure somewhere, not happening, because white can just slow play this.
Magnus is going to play your knight e2. He knows what's at stake here. He knows it.
He also knows that he can't get too low on time, because he will need time to convert this advantage.
But I think he's seeing the road now.
And he gets those 15 minutes at move 60 plus the 30-second increment, which is so huge. Because without the 30-second increment, good luck winning this game. I mean, it's beyond difficult because you don't get to rebuild your clock. But you can shuffle. When you get the increment, for players or for people watching who are not used to tournaments, you shuffle a bit. You repeat a position twice, not three times, because that would end the game in a draw. And that way you just build a minute on your clock here, a minute on your clock there, and you have time to think. Whereas for Jan, he is going to be defending for the next 50 moves, and one little slip-up, one reorganizing of white's knight that Fabio, you were just talking about with knight g1 to f3, that really could put black in pressure that you can't get out of.
Jan missed knight e2. You can tell from his... He probably thought bishop e5, white has no way to organize to stop h4 in the short term.